Confused for so long, I've been taken from my home, shipped across the seas. I've been whipped and enslaved, worked and unpaid. I've been lost for so long, searching far and wide, and I'm trying to find my name. Tell it to me, who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who's behind this plan? Who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who's behind this plan? Breathing out such lies, imposters in disguise. They stole away my name. Yes, their preachers play this game. They gave to me their JC and forcefully enslaved me. They made me serve this man, and this was all their plan. Tell it to me, who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who's behind this plan? Who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who's behind this plan? I know you're hiding, planning. I see you plotting, scheming, trying to keep me sleeping. I know you, I see you. My God is watching, waiting. He hears me pleading, calling. I'm changing and returning. I'm rising. You stole my language and identity. They dress and try to be like me, claim that they have freed me, but yet they still deceive me, teaching me their Bible, their Savior and disciple. They've thrown away their whips and replaced them with their tricks. Tell it to me, who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who's behind this plan? Who stole my name? Tell it to me, who's behind this game? Who stole my land? Tell it to me, who...
My name is Cohen Michael Ben Levi of the Hebrew family of Guyana. The aim of these dissertations is to cause the true house of Israel, who have been without knowledge of themselves for countless generations, and who are now being awakened by the God of the universe, to better serve our Creator. It is our hope that by reacquainting this awakening black nation with their laws and former history, it will hasten our return to our true identity, thereby acknowledging our ancient ancestors. This in turn will allow us to know our Father's God and prepare us to stand together to meet the terrible day of the Creator that He is now readying for all mankind. May He cause all your minds and hearts to understand.
Shalom Alaikum, Shabbat Shalom Lakim. May the Most High would have already, I pray, have blessed each and every one of you that is listening today, especially under the conditions of this pandemic and so many families that are mourning. May Yah comfort them heal those that are sick across the length and breadth of this earth. All lives matter. And so we're speaking about the entire human race. Today, it is a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and address you on a very important topic, and a topic that seems to be quite controversial at this time. And I'm hoping that I can shed some knowledge, some light on the topic that will help us on this planet to resolve some of the very critical issues that convert us in the form of controversies today, this being merely one of those controversies. The origin of the term Semite is going to be discussed today, and I would like to use a historical reference point beginning in the book of Genesis, the 9th chapter, and we're going to begin looking at just the 18th verse, and from there we'll be able to lay the premise and the foundation for the understanding of how this term Semite or anti-Semitic came into being. Again, in the book of Genesis, the chapter being the 9th chapter, the 18th verse. I would like to also point out that today I hope that you will reason with me. And that means that we have to use our thinking and put on our thinking caps, because this is not a religious presentation. It's a historical presentation to allow us to understand the fact that if we don't know where we came from, we won't know where we are, and we'll have no idea of where we're going. We must be able to understand history as opposed to religion, because the Bible, especially when we think of the book we call the Old Testament, which is the premise upon which we Hebrew Israelites base our understanding. We don't respect religion, the Bible, and so we especially know that the history that is in the Old Testament is authentic. Even Europeans who might have embraced and established Christianity, they recognize in all of the Western Hemisphere this what we consider Judaic Christian societies. And so they are based on the Bible, and Judaic meaning they're talking about Judah or the tribes that come from Israel. And so we're speaking of the genealogy, the line of Adam, and that brings us even to today. Our Genesis timeline that is before you dates from Adam until Abraham, or Avraham as we pronounce the genealogy, the line of Adam. If you look on the screen, we have Adam, and we can see that creation began at the top of this timeline with 4,000 BC, or Avraham, it should be BCE, or in other words, before Christian era. And so we want to make sure that you understand that Adam is actually a person who existed, really existed 4,000 years ago before the Christian era. We are now in 2020. The way the world has been deceived is that there is no real date called 2020. I was an elementary school teacher, and for many years I taught dates, and one of the tests would have, could you correctly pronounce the date 2020? And somebody that would have written in English 2020, A. Then they'd have 2020, B. And then they would have other answers. We all who are intelligent knows that that number 2020 is really pronounced 2020, representing 2020 years from the time of the birth of Christ. They call it Anno Domino, meaning the year of our Lord. So we must understand timelines in order to understand the Bible. And so when we look at that map again and we go down to Abraham, at the bottom of the map, we see here that Abraham actually lived approximately 2,000 years after, of course, Adam was in this earth. And we can see a Shem line there, very important, because this is where we're going to bring the point and prove and show the understanding of how we get to the name Semitic. And we see Noah, see Shem, we see Arpachshad, Salah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, and Terah. And all of those will lead and show that all of those names are part of a Semitic line, which are the sons of Noah. And so we will now go and understand this idea of how did we get to this timeline. The timeline is based on the genealogies in the Bible, beginning with Adam. He lived 930 years. We add his birth to that of Shem, and then we add all of the other sons as they go down, and we arrive at the dates, because the dates of the births and their deaths actually give us the timeline of the Bible. That is how it is done. It says, how do you arrive at the date of 4000 BC for the creation of the world? Genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11 follow the pattern. And father lived years and begot a son. Adding up those years shows that Abraham was born about 2000 years after God created Adam. We align Abraham's life with our calendar based on archaeological evidence. So we can move on now, because archaeological evidence proves that the Bible story is true. It's not just a written book. There's evidence. Archaeological findings are being done today. Archaeologists go in, they dig into the earth, which all the generations of mankind in any country, even the Indians of North America, their life story is in the earth. Because whatever happened when they died, it ended up being buried with that generation. Another generation comes on top of it. So the way scientists study, or archaeologists study the history of the world, is by going in, they find pottery, they find rings, they find other materials, combs, and it proves the history of the people of the earth. It's an overview of Bible history. This is a Bible timeline. It is a true timeline. If you notice, this is the true timeline of human beings on the planet. Because if you're not from the understanding of creationists, then you have to think that maybe there was a Big Bang Theory and we just blew up and appeared here. No, that did not happen. Then you are denying that there's a God, a creator who made heaven and earth. If you acknowledge that he's the creator of heaven and earth, then you are creationist. You agree, as many do, this has nothing to do with white and black. The many Europeans, Caucasian people that accept creationists and its teachings based on the Bible, many of them are Christians and not on Darwin's theory of evolution. So we're following the true timeline. This is the truth. There was, again, a flood in the earth shortly after Adam. And that's why we bring up Noah, because all of us know it, even in our Bible studies. We've heard about the story of Noah and God flooded. There are movies made on it. And of course, again, it was taking place in a particular geographical location. That's another part of the Bible that no one can deny. If you're going to have true understanding, you must know geography and know where these people live, what took place, because that's the only way you're going to get to the understanding. Today's teaching is about understanding. It has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with hatred. It has to do with truth. This is a truth-centered teaching. That's all we're teaching. We're not even asking you to accept it. We're just asking you to consider it, investigate it, because we know it's the truth. We just ask you to search it out for yourself so that the human race can all know and understand our common origin and our common humanity. That's what we're trying to do. Not separate us, bring us together. The patriarchs in 2000 BC says Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. We know the story of Joseph. He was sold into Egypt by his brothers. And so we know, again, the next point brings us from 2,000 years and 1,500 years after creation, about approximately 1,500 years. That's less than our present 2,000 years. And we can see that the Israelites were at that time in the land of Egypt. And of course, Moses comes into the history at that point, and the building of the tabernacle and the introduction of the Torah, or the laws of Yah. 1,500 years, remember, after creation, because now we're going down from creation. 2015, which actually, if it was the correct understanding, the numbers should be going up. So actually, if you understand the calendar, and I'm not going to get into it today, there is a timeline that runs from Adam up to what we call the Christian era, BCE. And then there's a timeline that Europeans use, which confuses everybody. They count time backwards. So they go again from a certain number of years prior to what we call the Christian era, and they begin to count backwards to creation. That's why people are confused, because I'll ask you a simple question. I will not give you the answer, because I just want to know, did you know? Do you know? Do you know the date? If this is 2020, the day one started us counting to get to 2020. My question to you, what is the date before day one on the Gregorian calendar that says to all the world kind, mankind has been in this era 2020 years? My question is that the history of all the earth and all mankind? No, it's not. What's excluded from it? The entire history of the Bible, from Adam to the Babylonian history or the Babylonian Empire, is the history of the Old Testament. And we can go down the historical timeline. We see in the 1400 BC, the conquest of Canaan, or Canaan, as many pronounce it. In Hebrew, it's called Canaan. In that period, we found and we know that, again, Joshua ended up, after we were there 430 years, Joshua let us out because Moses did not go into the promised land. These things are, as we always say, I'm not speaking something to force down your throat. This is verifiable. Most of you who are Bible students, you know this information. And therefore, there are those who do not know. You're my target. If you're searching for the truth, if you want to know, call up a friend, contact someone even after this is over and ask them to view this program, because many people on this earth are confused about this subject we call anti-Semitic. Today, I hope it's resolved for everyone's understanding. Period of the judges. We know, again, that that period is a part of those 1400 years BCE, or as we say, after creation. David lived 1,000 years approximately before the Christian era. And we can see that again from creation. That's another number, because that number would be rising and not going down and becoming lower or diminishing or decreasing. As from creation, when you count in, it should get higher. No number starting at zero should get lower as you're counting. They messed up your mind with that timeline. That's why we don't understand things that I'm explaining today. Not in detail, but you can understand. You have a problem understanding time, because the Europeans don't teach us time in school the way it should be taught, from creation to the present, or from the present back to creation. They even give us numbers like trillions of years ago. I can tell you this, no people were there. No people were there trillions of years ago. Yes, there may have been planets. There may have been the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, and it's changing form and what have you, geography and mountains changing and islands coming up out of the ocean. That was happening, no denial. But people started with Adam and Eve. Now we go down to another historical timeline, and that's called the Southern Kingdom of Judah. We know, of course, during Saul and David and Solomon, and the temple, again, was built during those times. We know the sons of Solomon, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and what happened with the split of the kingdom. That's why it says divided kingdom. And on its right, it says, perhaps your left, Elijah, Elisha, Jonah, Hosea. And then, of course, what they're really showing you down here, exile to Assyria, because the northern kingdoms went into captivity during that time under Sargon II. It's recorded in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. On the other side, we have again the Kings, 2 Chronicles, Jeremiah and Ezekiel prophesying about the exile to Babylon, because Judah, like Oholibah and Oholibamah, Judah did not learn from his sister Samaria. He ended up doing the same thing, turning on the Creator, and he too went into captivity with the other tribes of Israel, being most of them having gone to the Assyrian captivity. And if you understand history, the Assyrians were conquered by the Babylonians. So eventually, all of the Israelites come under the Babylonian rule. And that's why we know 70 years Babylonian captivity. We had a decree that allowed us to go back. We know that. Later on, the return and the restoration of Judah in 538, that was Ezra, Nehemiah. Of course, many other history took place in this broad timeline. But the one I want you to come to is the next one, and we'll stop there because this is going to be complete for our topic today. The intertestament period, 432 BC approximately, and you come down to the Christian era, approximately 400 years, the Israelites were going into captivity, running into Africa, because as the Greeks invaded and the Romans invaded the Babylonian, the Persian, and the Median Empire, the Israelites didn't go north, they went south into the countries of Africa. They would have stood out like a sore thumb going into Europe, being a people of pigmentation. They went where they could hide among the Semitic nations down in the southern part of the continent of Africa, from Northeast Africa. And so we want you to know that during this 432 year, known as the Maccabean history, found in the book of the Apocrypha, one will find that during that time, the Jewish people were now forming what is known today as the Babylonian and the Palestinian Talmud. That's when these converted understanding of the teachings of the Israelites shifted from one people to another. Because remember, in our previous lessons, and if you ever look at my book called Israelites and Jews, we'll try and hold it up before this program is over. It actually says Israelites and Jews is titled The Significant Difference, because over 10, 15 years ago, I published a writing making that distinction between the Israelite, who are the true people, and the natural bona fide descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the European Jews who converted to a heritage based on the Torah, which is the laws and the covenant given to the children of Israel. And anyone, we hope that everyone will practice the Torah. We have nothing against anyone practicing the Torah, because we apologize. We should have been the people who should have taught it to everyone, and we did not do it. We forsook the same laws, statutes, and commandments, and that's why throughout Deuteronomy 28, we have been told that we would be scattered to the four corners of the earth, and that a yoke would be put on our necks. And we did have a yoke on our neck and our ankles. If you study the history of the Jewish religion, you will find out that they never went through this historical experience that is described in the Bible. There was a Holocaust. If one wants to say Jews were killed in Europe, we're not debating that. That's not our presentation today. They teach that. We're not getting into that. What we are saying is that they never had chains put around their necks, nor did they have them put on their ankles and on their wrists. And that's the point that we're making. We're trying to make the distinction between the children of Israel and people who are Jews today. We respect them. I've worshiped with Jewish people in synagogues. Many Israelites have, and what have you. We have many rabbis. In fact, I am a representative of a line of teachers that started with a man named Rabbi Matthews in New York City, in Harlem. He knew he was an Israelite. He taught on the streets in New York City, and eventually by Jews, I'm told, he was given an indoor building, a synagogue, where he would no longer speak to the people in Harlem on the streets, but he had a smaller audience in a building. That was the way I was told. They shut down his ability to reach the masses. And so under the help of Jewish authorities, he began to be given a talis, a scroll, and the other Jewish paraphernalia, all of the things that they wrapped tefillin with. And so his representation of the Israelite heritage took a slight twist, but you have to understand the time. He had no other help. No, he was the beginning of it all. And they offered, he did not understand, perhaps as I do today, the significant difference between the two. But maybe that was a conspiracy to remove him from speaking to our own people. And rather having large numbers, the numbers were reduced when they took him off the streets of Lenox Avenue and 125th Street. Brothers and sisters, we now want to look at another aspect of this, and we want to go to Genesis, the 18th chapter. So we have a reader who is now going to begin reading our Cohane Eliel in Genesis, the 9th chapter, and of course, in the 18th verse is where we're going to begin, and our explanation and commentary will begin at this point. It says, and of course, in the
Genesis chapter 9, verse 18. And the sons of Noach that went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. Genesis chapter 9, verse 19.
Of course, what this is telling us is that Noah had three sons. Their names, Shem is the eldest,
and
Ham, called Kam in Hebrew, which is the second, and Japheth, the third son, is again three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So that we want to realize and understand that Shem, Japheth, represents the eldest son. Ham represents Noah's second son. And Japheth is the youngest son. And it's also telling us that Ham is the father of the Canaanites. So we know that whenever we speak about the Canaanites concerning the Israelites whose land they were given, we're talking about Hamitic people. So Shemitic people, the Israelites, which I'm going to show that the Israelites are of Shemitic seed. The word Semitic came from this word Shem, and that's why we're calling this the origin of the term Semitic. Semitic is a term that distorts the truth in reality. How does it do it? Because when you hear anti-Semitic, most people think only of a Jewish people. And we're going to see that there are many people who are Semites from the seed of Shem or Shemitic people. Semitic is a modern term for the Hebrew term Shem. Greek Sem, Hebrew Shem, a member of any of the people whose language is Shemitic. Semitic, including Hebrews, because why are they showing? They're showing you that the word Semitic came from Shemitic. So you have to know the origin being who? Who is Semitic? The sons of Shem. They're not called Semitic people, Shemitic people. But see, they don't want you to realize that it's Noah's children. Did you know? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Did you know what I'm sharing with you? If you do know it, congratulations. You were revealed and shown truth. Now I'm asking you, take this and reveal it to other people. Everybody on the planet is entitled to knowing the truth. That's all my purpose is today, to tell the truth. And if it's not the truth, come and prove it it's not. Prove it in the Bible. This is where dictionaries, I got this definition from the Webster's World Book Encyclopedia. They name, including Hebrews, Arabs, Assyrians. Nowhere do you see Jewish people up there, because Jewish people are Europeans. They're called converts, and we'll talk about that later. But Noah's second son, when the dictionary says traditionally the ancestor of what? African peoples. I didn't say that. That's in the World Book Encyclopedia. And it tells you that the dictionary, that is, not it's like a World Book Dictionary, Webster's. And it tells you the verses it comes from. In the term of Japhet in the Bible, the youngest of Noah's son, 3 sons, because they include this in the definition to let you know the one they left out, if Noah is the second and Japhet is the 3rd son, I ask you to reason with me. Who is the oldest son? Shem. That's why they always have them in this order. Shem, the eldest, Ham, the 2nd son, and Japhet, the youngest one. Japhetic, or from Japhet, means they're Indo-European, distinguished from Hamitic or Shemitic, not Semitic people. I'm now giving you the origin of the word Semitic, which comes from the word Shem, one of the 3 sons of Noah, in particular, his eldest son. We're going to go through the history that will lead us to Abraham, because we got to see, well, how do the Israelites end up being anti-Semitic? It's impossible. That's why our brother, Nick Cannon, I would ask him to please, and all the others, like I've heard recently that Carmelo Anthony has stumbled onto this truth and these facts, that Fantasia has come to know it, because I said in many of my other presentations, this is spreading like wildfire. You can't stop it. No one can stop it. It's a spirit of prophecy that is now being fulfilled because its time has come. So that we must understand and realize that, again, Shemitic people are people that are the sons of Noah. And Abraham's seed line, we will prove it coming up very shortly throughout this presentation, that the Israelites are Shemitic people. That's like saying, you know, if you were an ancient Israelite and you heard one of Abraham's sons, Jacob, call Ishmael that he was anti-Semitic, that would be absurd. Why? Because Ishmael is Abraham's son too, and all of Abraham's seed is Shemitic. Even if you go to the Edomites, because Esau and Jacob were the sons of who? Isaac. Now, could Jacob call Esau anti-Semitic? Nor could Esau call Jacob anti-Semitic, because what? They're both Semitic, Shemitic, if you understand the origin. I'm just using Semitic because that's the term that they have so strategically deceived you with. Now I want you to understand, whenever you hear Semitic, they're talking about Shemitic people, the eldest son of Noah. Now, was there any color at that time? No, people were never called by color in ancient day. That's a new phenomenon, the idea of color. And we'll get to that as we continue on. Let's have our reading, but we're going to bring out where the color line started. Let's continue with our reading. Here we have that Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. It says, a pioneer in anthropology and craniology, was born on May 11, 1752 at Gotha. He studied medicine at Jena under Sumerian and qualified in 1776 at Göttingen, where he was appointed extraordinarily professor of the practice of medicine in the following year and full professorship in 1778. In his thesis entitled De Generis Humani Varietate Nativa, 1776, which according to Garrison is the starting point of modern ethnology. He based his classification on mankind upon the shape of the skull and the facial configuration, as well as on the color of the skin. As the result of his craniological investigations, he divided the human race into 5 great families: the Caucasian or white race, the Mongolian or yellow, the Malayan or brown, the Negro or black, and the American or red, perhaps of course meaning the American Indian. In reality, there are no white people. A piece of white paper put up against a European Caucasian will show you they're not white. If you look up into Europe, it tells you on this map that Japheth and all of the seed of Japheth, which we're going to look at in a few moments in Genesis 10, we're laying the geographical groundwork to show you that Japheth, all of them settled in Europe, so that we know where Japhetic people, the sons of Noah called Japheth, settled. He settled in the place we know as Europe. Let's look at the second son, Japheth being the youngest. Ham. Ham is the second son. There's Egypt. He's there in Africa with Cush down below in Ethiopia, Lake Chad. All of that is Africa. I didn't make these maps. I have my own. This too points to the fact, the truth, that Ham resided in Africa. Let's go to Shem. Shem is actually in the borders of Northeast Africa. If you look up at places like, again, the places where you look at where Abraham was and the land of Israel up in the north there, and you look and you see, again, where we have the Tigris River, and you're going to see that Shem had two genealogies. Yoktan, as we'll show you on another map as well, up in the northern part, and Yoktan was down in the southern part. You can see Yoktan down here as also Shem, because Shem has two genealogies. One is the genealogy that leads to Abraham, and another will lead to other peoples, perhaps some being Chinese stock. You'll find out that some being perhaps East Indian stock, because Semitic people have also races of Black people, if you want to deal with pigmentation or pigmented people, that will mix with non-pigmented people. That's why we have a word in Hebrew called Erev. Erev means, and it's the Hebraic pronunciation of Arab. It means Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv in Hebrew means mixture, because there are some people that are mixed. Even in Puerto Rico, the history of Puerto Rico has the Taínos Indians that were originally there, the Spanish that later came, the slaves that came, and then of course, the Europeans that came in, all of them mixed in, and by 1898, no one could see a pure Spaniard, a pure Taínos Indian, a pure European, or pure African. So they came up with a name called Puerto Ricans. It's a history of the mixing and how Puerto Ricans came into existence. I took Puerto Rican at City College in history. I know it to this day. That was over 55 years ago or more. I still remember it because I lived in Harlem and I wanted to know my brothers and sisters of Spanish origin. In fact, I want to know everybody's history. I respect all peoples. But today, I know that we are not respected. Why would we have a movement like All Lives Matter and saying Black Lives Matter? Because we don't matter. And I'm showing you here's some truth that's very deep as to why we don't matter to them. This is deeper than just the color of your skin. This is about who you are. Something is being hid from you. Did you hear that song that Cohane Eliel sang when the beginning came on, when this came on? He said, there's a game, there's a plan. There's a game and a plan played against us. Because Malcolm said it, you've been duped. You've been bamboozled. You've been hoodwinked. I'm trying to help you. And I know a lot of our people, you know what? It's unfortunate. But when a Black man, so-called Black man, tell them the truth, they don't believe him. They only believe it when a white man tells them. And that's the sad part about what I'm doing. I get a harder time for my people who don't know the truth, and all the Europeans out there saying, they should listen to this man. He's speaking so intelligently, and he's laying out facts that if they just would just humble themselves, they would wake up. But we don't listen. We always trying to be controversial. Even in our own seeking for truth, we don't know how to compromise. we got some serious problems. And I want to tell you this, the Bible tells you why. See, this is your whole story of your life is the Old Testament. Every Black person, if you want to know what happened to you, you need to read the Old Testament of the Bible. That's your history prior to becoming a Christian, prior to becoming a slave in the Western Hemisphere. And that's just a fact of the matter. And that's why they gave you a New Testament, because they don't want you to read the Old. They don't want you to know the truth. They're deceiving you and pointing you in every path, but the path that'll lead you back to who you are. So again, I want you to understand some other terms that I'm going to introduce to you now. And I want you to know that you've heard the word convert before. And I want you to know that by the dictionary's definition, a convert is a person who changes or turns from his religion or doctrine or opinion or course of action to another. Jewish people are Europeans who say they converted. I'm not saying it. That means if we understand what they're saying, they changed from a European heritage to a Semitic, to an African teaching and doctrine. The doctrine that Europeans changed to, whether they're a German Jew, a French Jew, a Czechoslovakian Jew, a Hungarian Jew, a Russian Jew, a German Jew, how can you be all those things and still be an Israelite? It's confusing. It just don't make no sense unless you know and have sense like I do, because I know the truth. I was taught. There are many of our people out there, you have to be taught. There were teachers, I told you, Rabbi Matthew, Rabbi Wilkins, who taught Cohane Levy, who taught me. I'm teaching teachers. He had other teachers that have gone out and taught in other places, so many of them. These teachers are spreading all over. Find you a teacher. That's what I have to say to all those celebrities that are just waking up. We've had Israelites that have known what you're finding out over 100 years ago. You need to contact the people that know so that we can really get this to the masses, because imagine if Oprah knew this. Every Black person that now goes to her show will wake up. Oprah, all in books that she endorsed this truth. Tyler Perry endorsed this. Research it. If it's not true, don't endorse it. But if it is, tell our people that that man is speaking the truth. Conversion, a change from lack of faith to religious belief. They're saying by their definition, some of those Europeans didn't even have no faith. They got it when they studied the word of God, the Moses law that he received on Mount Sinai in Africa. Mount Sinai is in Africa. Don't believe me. The Caucasus Mountains are in Europe. Don't believe me there. Study geography. Reversion. They are doing a conversion. You a Black person, you're supposed to be doing a reversion, a returning or being turned the opposite way. You're going into other religions, other cultures. Make a reversal, come back to your heritage, a return to a former state of custom or belief. What was that custom? It was the Torah. It was the laws given to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, all the holy days that are in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, everything, the Shabbat day, not on Sunday, but on Saturday. That is your real heritage. That's why you're suffering today, because everybody have you disobeying God, and they know that if you disobey him, they don't have to do anything else to you. He said he would punish you, and that's why you're being punished. Black people, Israelites, you are being punished in the West Indies. You are being punished in Africa in all the colonial territories. Nigerian Igbos, Ghanaians are called the Ashanti. The Zulus of South Africa, still under apartheid. Now they're on the economic apartheid. They're suffering because they're Israelites and they're serving false gods in South Africa, and they're living by things that break the Torah. They're living an unrighteous lifestyle. In North America, we're living unrighteously. That's why you're punishing. God is punishing. He uses people to punish you too. He's using the police. Before the police, it was the slave master. He didn't have on a uniform. After him, it was a white man with a hood on his head. 100 years of lynching. That's all from God. Let me ask you this question. If God loved you so much, why are you suffering so much? He loves you so much, then why are we suffering? Let's reason now. I'm telling you, the Bible tells you you are sinning against God, and you've been doing it for a long time. So-called black man, true Israel. That's your problem. And that's why everybody's tricking you, because God took your knowledge of yourself. He said, I'm going to call you, they will call you everything but a child of God. They're going to call you a black man, a Negro, colored, everything else, West Indian. They'll call you anything. African. African don't mean no people. They know that. They're playing with your mind. They're glad if you call you an African. But Europeans, they call themselves French, Dutch, the Netherlands, Spanish, the Germans. They're in a continent too, but they don't call themselves by a continent because they have national intelligence. They know who they are. You don't. I'm trying to help you get it. You're an Israelite. Your land is Israel. Your language is Hebrew. Your geographical location is Northeast Africa. They know it. We have brothers and sisters living there right now, waiting for you to come home, but they don't want you to wake up, because if you join them, we got a problem in Israel. Like he said in the song, took your land. They had a plan, playing a game on you. Who's in charge of the game of the conspiracy to keep you in confusion? I'm trying to help you figure it out. It's just the truth. That's all it is. People get angry when you tell the truth. They're going to try and call this racism too. But you know, I haven't said nothing about racism. In fact, I want to let you know this. Some of the nicest people and kindest people to me and my family have been Jewish people in New York City. And that's from a child. So I know that there are good people among all races, just like there are bad people among all races, just like there are drunkards and murderers and liars. No people have a monopoly on righteousness or on evil. We all got some of each. So be clear on me. I'm just trying to let you know the facts of the matter. And these are the facts that show the origin, remember the topic, the origin of the term called Semitic. It originated from a term called Shemitic, one of the sons of Noah in the Bible. You don't have to show no color, because anybody that knows history knows that only black people were Egyptians. That's why they never used color back then. They knew the Philistines were pigmented. It would have been absurd for one black man, the pot to call a kettle black. Everybody knew what they were. We defined ourselves by cultures, by language, the Hebrew people, the Aramaic people, meaning the Babylonians that spoke Aramaic, the language from which Hebrew came. Arik, the Ethiopian geese. We knew the people of Ethiopia, the Cush seed. Ethiopia is a modern name for Cush. The Cushites are the original name for Ethiopia. It's in the Bible, right in that same chapter. We're going to it in a few moments. But our concentration, I can tell you now, our emphasis is on the seed of Shem. I'm just skimming over. I could go into great detail on each of these peoples. So now I want you to just remember that we must know that whenever you hear the term Semitic, you're talking about Noah's son Shem, and you have to know this: no European can be a Japhetic seed and a Shemitic seed. Their scientists said two things cannot occupy one space at the same time. Two people can't be Israel. Somebody is and somebody's not. When I was coming up, they had a program called To Tell the Truth. They would have 3 different contestants, 2 of them imposters, 1 of them being the true person. I'm saying today, would the true Israelites stand up? And would the imposter confess and say, I was just pretending, he's the real one? That's what we need. It'll help the planet. It'll help humanity to come together. All people, the brotherhood of mankind, the universal brotherhood. I've read it and I love his writing, the writings that are, again, of James Allen. He speaks about the universal brotherhood and says that there's never been one. He's right. Do you know that Isaiah the prophet prophesied that Yah, the creator, said he's going to bring all people together and that the law will go out from Jerusalem, that from Shabbat to Shabbat and new moon to new moon, all the people of the earth are going to worship one creator who gives us a common denominator. He made us all. We are all his children. And then when we get that, we'll start acting like brothers and sisters, especially if we go by his instructions, his laws, as he recorded them in the Torah. It's a law that teaches people how to love one another, how to stick together, how to help each other, how to be righteous in their endeavors. Even when there's misunderstanding, the Torah teaches us how to resolve them in a righteous and a peaceful manner without violence. So don't label this racism. It's not. Again, the color scheme has to be destroyed. It has to be eliminated. It has to be, again, put away because it's not the truth. We now want to go to the 10th chapter, the first verse, to look at Japhet. And as we get there, I want to define the following terms. You're going to see them. But our reader would begin reading in the 10th chapter and the first verse. It says,
Genesis chapter 10, verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood.
So now we see that,
Genesis chapter
these
10,
three sons,
verse 2.
Sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth is consistent. It didn't change, same order. Now we're going to deal with the sons of Japheth in the second verse.
And Yovan, and Tubal,
Gomer,
and Meshech,
it says.
and Tiras. Genesis chapter 10, verse 3. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphat, and Togarma.
And of course,
Genesis.
Ashkenaz is the Ashkenazi Jew. He's in Japheth's seed, and Japheth's seed is in Europe. Again, Tarshish, Kittim is Greece. It's in Europe. Tarshish, I'm showing that never has a Japhetic people had any Hebrew origin, it says.
This chapter 10, verse 4. And the sons of Yovan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim.
I want you to know, I did not hear, you perhaps did not hear the sons of Japheth in the second verse, Gomer and Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tigris. And when that map is shown of northern Europe, you will see all of these names resided there. It says in the 5th verse.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 5. Of these were the isles of the nations divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nation.
Noted, of these were the isles, because much of Europe, such as Spain and Greece and what have you, they're isles, they're islands and isles of Europe. And so we also see here that he lets us know that these were families, not religions. This is a genealogy of the people of the earth. And that's why many people don't understand the Bible, because all of these begot this one, the other one begot him, and that genealogy, they don't teach it to you in a simplistic way like I'm doing so you can understand it. They don't want you to understand. That's why you're in the New Testament all the time, and you can never really know what they're talking about because you don't know the past. If you don't know where it came from, you'll never understand where you are, and therefore you have no idea where things are going. It goes on and it says, these families, of course, the families that populate Europe. Now we look
Genesis
at
chapter
Africa
10,
and the sons of Ham.
verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan. Genesis chapter 10, verse 7. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raama, and Sabteka, and the sons of Raama, Sheba, and Dedan.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going into much detail, but I want you to know that Cush is Ethiopia, Mitzrayim is Egypt. We had, again, put there being Lydia. We had other nations there that were mentioned. They're all part of Semitic seed there in Africa. Why does the Bible genealogy begin with Japhet? Because of this history, he's the least important. Ham, which is more involved, even as the Bible goes on, will be more involved in the history because Japhet, after the fall of the temple of Babel, he is going to, in the 11th chapter, wander off into Europe and Northeast Africa in greater numbers. So he will not be a part of the history of Africa as a whole during biblical historical times, meaning the Old Testament history of those 4,400 years. This is his brief entrance and he exits out. And of course, we are concentrating and moving to Ham. And then of course, the Bible will be strictly dealing with the Semitic seed because it's going to Abraham, who has the son. He has a son called Isaac, and Isaac has Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, and they're all Semitic seed. So is Ishmael, and none of them can be called anti-Semitic because they're all all of them are Semitic, and they can't be against themselves. Anti means against or opposed to. We are not opposed to being ourselves. We are not opposed to learning our language. Nick Cannon is not opposed to his own history, his own heritage, nor is any other person who's actually a Shemite. So that's the point he's trying to make. But I know he couldn't explain it like this. I hope this will help him and every other person that wants to know the truth, whether Israelite or non-Israelite. It doesn't matter. We're one human. Every human being is entitled. That's your human right to know the truth, especially about yourself. That's why such a great injustice exists against so-called Black people, because there's been a conspiracy for hundreds of years to keep the knowledge of ourselves from us. Now, I know that sounds very, very strong. It's just the truth. If they say that fiction is stranger than truth, this is one of those cases. I know it sounds strange, but I tell you one thing, it is the truth. And when you get it revealed, you'll know and see how it became such a fuzzy, unclear topic to you. It was done deliberately. These definitions and changes of terminology is to throw you off course and off the path of true understanding. Get wisdom, the Bible says. Get knowledge, the Bible says. But in all thy getting, get understanding. I'm giving you the correct, the true understanding. Don't believe me. Investigate, search it out, prove all things that I'm saying to you to be true. 10th chapter, next verse. We're going now to the genealogy of Shem. We've covered. We have more verses here.
Genesis chapter 10.
Very extensive genealogy. Notice that the genealogy of Japhet, he was fewer in number. Shem and Ham of Noah's sons were more populous, had more people in greater generations than did the European. Even today, 3/4 of the world's population, or 2/5 of people of pigmentation. That's one of the reasons behind what we call white supremacy. As it developed, that's why they had to come with a color line, because they had a problem with being in a position of minority with numbers. But it shows you that God is in charge. Even with our numbers, they still rule over us because we were put under them by God Almighty. And we are not trying to rule over white people. We never have. We haven't done to them what they've done to us. So this is not about our hating them. The problem is we are receiving all of this hatred. 8th verse, it says.
Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 through 12. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Wherefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter
This is
before
before
Yahweh.
Abraham. This is an early period in history where this man known as Nimrod, he was really the first explorer because he started moving out from the Fertile Crescent and going into places like Babylon, Nineveh, because that's where we're going to see the first cradle of civilization began in the places of Babel or Babylon, because you have to know that there are really two Babylons. There's a Babel in the time of this early period, and then there's another Babylon in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. That's in the 600, 500 BCE. This is showing you how early Babylon was the cradle of all civilization. It says in verse number 10.
And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and
The
Akkad,
Akkadians
and Chal.
are also an ancient people. You can look them up. Chaldine, in the land of Shinar. Shinar, a synonymous term for Babylon or Babel, meaning confusion. Verse 11.
In the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and builded Nineveh, and Rehoboth, Allah.
Do you know that Nineveh is the capital of Iran today? That's in Asia. Nineveh, the city that Jonah the prophet went to and was supposed to prophesy there. So you have to know history, know the connection when you're reading the Bible. One of these days I'm going to speak about in more detail how important it is to be a good reader. I really hope the young people are listening to me, because sometimes old folks are stubborn, they can't change. But I like teaching young people. Their minds are open, they want to learn. Some people are stuck on stupid. I realize that. I pray for you. But I want you to know that if you don't know these terms and connect them up with places on earth, it says, and risen between Nineveh and Calah, the same as the great city of Nineveh that Noah went through. It's in the land of Iran. Don't believe me. Do your geography research. You'll find out that it's a fact. Facts. I'm a fact finder. Some people call me a priest, a minister, really, because I minister to people. Some people call me a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm really a student because I'm still studying and learning. I'm going to be a student all my life. You can call me a teacher all you want. I know what I am. I'm learning. You never stop learning. German, Ashkenaz, the Ashkenazi Jews. Greece, Kittim. Spain, Tarshish, also known as the Sephardim. Jews who settled in middle northern Europe, they are distinguished from the Sephardim by being called the Ashkenazi Jews. The Jews originated in Germany, the Jewish religion, the Jewish people. There is no such thing as a Jewish people. The Israelites are a people. The Jews are a religion. That's why we have to get these terms straight and start calling Jews a people when they're not, because they're Czechoslovakians. That's their real people place. They're Russian Jews that converted, German Jews, French Jews, Spanish Jews. They're even Arab Jews. I had a Hebrew teacher, he was an Arab Jew, and the Arabs and the Jews didn't even get along. But he converted from, I guess, Islam or whatever he was, his religion, to the Jewish Torah and studying it under the Jews and their religion. And so again, they have modified for the European mindset a culture that was an African culture and modified it to be a European culture. Even some of the garments that they wear in Judaism could never be worn in the hot climates of Africa. They're written about in my book. We have other things that can let you know and understand that they speak Yiddish. That's not Hebrew. That's using other words with Hebrew letters. For instance, if you go to Israel, like I have many times, you might see written in Hebrew, Pepsi Cola, with a pay, a sadeh, another letter, a sin perhaps, and some other thing that's represented in Hebrew letters, but Pepsi Cola it's not a Hebrew word. So that's why I'm showing you that I was in school. In my book, I wrote about it. I had a book that said, Uri Yesh, a word that Jewish use on his head, and we had another word. They use a word for hat that is different from hat from Hebrews. We call it a kippah. They call it a yarmulke. So in the book it said, as I was reading before the class, it says, Uri had a yarmulke on his head, but I wouldn't read it because I was taking a Hebrew course and I denied reading a Yiddish word when I knew that wasn't Hebrew. So I said before the whole class and the Arab professor, Uri Yesh Kippah Aro. So he said, no, don't say that, don't say that. Read what's in the book. I said, Uri Yesh Kippah Aro. So he said, no, if you read it again, I'm gonna fail you. I said, if you do, I will report you to the dean and to the head of this department. I signed up for Hebrew and now you're trying to push Yiddish on me. I'm going to the dean. He said, okay, read Kippah, you're right. It's okay. Because I told you, you got to take a stand. I heard, again, some of our great leaders. These men, I admire them. Our brother that stood up and he died recently, Lewis, and so many others, too many to name. It's almost a slighting to name any of them. Martin Luther King, Abernathy. Hey, these men, they had courage to stand up. Hoses and German shepherd dogs put on, hanged up on trees for just trying to tell the truth. And so I want you to know that there are people that don't like the truth. They don't want to hear these facts brought out because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to understand who you are. This is not against them. This is for us. See, prejudice is another word that they throw on us to try to make us feel like we're unrighteous. You're prejudiced. So are you. So are you. And when it comes to apple pie and sweet potato pie, I'm prejudiced towards sweet potato pie because it don't mean I don't like apple pie. It means that I have a preference for. Everyone should have a preference for their own people. Not only us, they say charity begins at home. Even a European a Frenchman should be for a Frenchman before he's for a German person. Because what is his own people? He ain't against Germans, but he's prejudiced towards his own first. Don't let people play this color game on you and make you feel bad. They don't feel bad about sticking together. Don't you feel bad? I'm not insulting them, and don't let them try to make this an assault against them. They don't want you to hear what I'm saying because it's the truth. The truth is what they fear. Any liar, if you think about it in a courtroom, the last person he wants in that courtroom is the person that knows and is willing to speak the truth. I'm telling you, that's what's going on right now. They know this is the truth. Invite me on your program. That's what I'm saying. I'm here, invite me. Let's do a Zoom and ask me the question that you asked Nick Cannon and all the other people that don't know. And I'm not the only one that knows. You know the people that know. You know how to find us. Ask the Israelites that don't know where to find us. They'll help you, but you don't want this. That's why we thank the Almighty for an opportunity like this. I'm thankful for all the people that make this possible. I'm just a speaker, but there are people behind the scene that are making these maps available to you to help you understand, to put this footage together. I'm thankful, I'm grateful. And above all, I thank the Holy One of Israel the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our power. The Creator is the power that we have to come to understand. This is about power. And they holding you back from the greatest power in the universe, the maker of heaven and earth. Your God, black man, is the creator and maker of heaven and earth, and there is no one higher. And that's why you are in trouble, because you made the maker of heaven and earth angry. You broke an agreement. You broke the promise to live by the laws, the statutes, and the commandments that he gave and made with Moses on Mount Sinai. Don't believe me. Just read the Old Testament. Come back and tell me. Cohen, it's all in there. Everything you saying is the truth. It's in my Bible and everybody's Bible. So that if I'm lying, your Bible's gonna prove me wrong. I'm not gonna embarrass myself. I know what's in there. I've done read it over 50 something times every single year. So I could tell you, I know what's in there. I've researched it. I got Bible dictionaries. I speak Hebrew fluent. I could do this whole program in Hebrew, but you're not ready for that yet. But as time is gonna come, we're learning our language. There are people teaching it. There are people doing this in Hebrew, studying the whole Holy Scriptures in Hebrew. They don't have to look at English. Guess what? They look just like me. And there are Europeans that do it too. Because I want you to know, they've studied us very well. That's one thing you got to know about the Jewish people. So if you think you're going to stand up and start talking about this and you just open up the book, you out of your mind. These people have been studying this, I told you, from the Palestinian Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, right up to the present. You can look up Hillel, Maimonides, and all these scholars. I studied them too. That's how I know about it. But I can make a distinguish. Because see, when you're seeking the truth, you can't be afraid to look at everything. Because the place you deny and afraid to look at might be the very place where there is some truth. So that's why I told you, I study everybody, and I don't have enough time on the planet to learn it all. Nobody does. So I'm trying to get the little as I can while I'm here. And main thing, pass it on. Knowledge is not to be hoarded up. It's to be shared. I'm just sharing my knowledge with you. You could even reject it. I don't have no problem. My job is tell them whether they hear or whether they forbid. See, I don't make the choice. You got to make that choice. Only thing is, I'm asking you to please listen to me. Give me a chance to speak to your ear and your heart and your mind. That's all I'm asking. And then you be honest with yourself. Go investigate it. Find out if what I've told you is true. Did you ever investigate Christianity? Did you ever investigate what you've been told about Jesus? Did you investigate the New Testament? Did you investigate the Quran to see whether or not this order that I'm telling you is true? The three greatest religions, Judaism came first. Christianity came after. Islam is the last of the three great religions. In all three of them, why Judaism came first? Because the Palestinian Jews and the Babylonian Jews and the Babylonian Talmud and Palestinian Talmuds started hundreds of years before Christianity. I showed you that when I showed you the intermediate period, or that period that's between Old Testament and New Testament. That's where all this Jewish stuff starts. So when you get to Christianity in the first century BCE or BC or AD, Anno Domini, then we begin to get year one. So that's why you have to understand the timeline. That makes everything crystal clear when you understand geography, history, and you got to be a reader, and you got to look up words that you don't know. I've done that research. That's why I can explain what I'm explaining. Let's move on now to our next precept so that we can begin to understand the line of Shem. That's where we're going. That's where the Bible's going. It's trying to now get to the main genealogy, and we're going through Ham. He has Mitzrayim, again, Ludim, Animim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Parusim, Kasluhim, went forth the Philistines in the Caphtorim. What is he telling you? Ham spread out from that place we call the Fertile Crescent. He left Africa. He started to spread into places called Mesopotamia, Canaan land. And that's why the Canaanites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, that's how they end up getting in the land we call Israel. They now moved. And so it says further concerning how Ham spread out all the ways you see the places like Sodom and Gomorrah. They were Hamites too. Those anti-men, because that's another word in Guyana and in the West Indies, they call an anti-person. They say anti-man, against a man, opposed to man. That's meaning when you're a man and you want to be a woman, that's another way they use anti, against or opposed to. Just using the term to show you how it's used in the West Indies. Tamshi.
Genesis chapter 10, verses 13 and 14. And Mizraim begot Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Kasluhim, whence went forth the Philistines and Caphtorim. Genesis chapter 10,
and I've explained to you, this is again Egypt, and we have again and other Canaan nations, Cushi, of course, in Ethiopia, and we won't go into details with the seed of Ham at this time.
Edom, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite,
the Hittites,
and the Amorite,
came from Ket, the terrible,
and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Arkite, and the Senite, and the Arvad, the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanite spread abroad.
Families, not religions, peoples. All nations started with a man who had children. He had children, his children had children, cousins, aunts, uncle. The family multiplied into a nation. Every nation started that way.
Genesis chapter 10, verses 19 and 20. And the border of the Canaanite was from Zidon,
meaning the Phoenicians,
as thou goest,
Zidon, the Phoenicians, as thou goest towards Gerar,
toward Gerar, unto God, toward Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, unto Lasha.
Geographically, you're going south from northeast Africa.
These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, in their nations.
Now seeing how the three sons of Noah spread out, because we know that it says by these three were all the nations divided and was the whole earth overspread. This is how mankind began to spread out with these three sons of Noah. Every people on earth go back to one of the three sons of Noach. Noach, called Noah in English, means comfort or rest, Nak. And so this man brought comfort after the earth was cursed for hundreds of years due to the sin that took place in the garden. Now we see that we have the understanding that we're going towards that genealogy that will point us to the seed of Shem, where the Bible concentrates most of its attention, because the seed of Shem is really what the Bible is all about. It's the seed of Abraham, the seed of Isaac, and the seed of Jacob. You won't hear any more about the seed of Japheth. Hamitic nations will not be mentioned by Ham, but as Canaanites, the Phoenicians, you have to now know that they are from Ham, Shem, when you're reading the rest of the Bible. You have to bring this beginning knowledge to understand the knowledge in the big. That's why this was laid out as a foundation, so that when you get further into the reading, into the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, when you get to 1st and 2nd Samuel, Kings and 1st Kings and 2nd Kings, and Isaiah, Jeremiah, all that, you have to know this fundamental knowledge or you're going to be lost. You have to know geography, and you better know how to read, because I didn't go into it. But these names, Aram, as we're going to come here, that's where the Arameans come from. That's just giving you clues. Shem means name. Elam, that's where the come through. The people we call Hindu, they're Hoodoo. That's their origin. You got to know these names because there's information among the people that tell you even why some of these words are formed to be what they are. Shad, the end of a word. What does it mean? I'm not going to tell you everything today. I want to get to the point. The origin of the term of Semitic comes from this man, his seed. Now, are the Japhetic people Shemites? No, they're not. Can they be? No, they cannot. Why? Because you can change your religion. You can practice my way of life, but you can't be me. You cannot change yourself to another pigmentation, another culture, another person, another mother and father's offspring. That's what Jewish people have done literally. And that's why this has to be corrected. The truth has to come out. The people that are Czechoslovakian Jews, German Jews, Russian Jews, French Jews, they are not from the son of Shem. They're from Japhet. And Shem is his elder brother. Let's read and see that this is true.
Genesis chapter 10, verses 21 and 22. And unto Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japhet, to him also were children born. And the sons of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arpachshad, and Lud,
Talking about
and Aram.
Libya, and the Arameans, the Assyrians, the East Indians, in that part of the region called Asia.
Genesis chapter 10, verses 23 and 24. And the sons of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Getir, and Mash, and Arpachshad begot Shelah, and Shelah
and
begot
because
Eber.
that's the seed that Abraham comes from. Aram, he was the Aramean people. So that's why now we're beginning to see where this seed, who are called Shemitic, where they come from in their seed line. Come see. In verse 25.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 25. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg.
This is very important point here, because Peleg means division. And in his days, it is said that the earth was divided. Historians believe that after the flood, much of the earth, which was in one mass, it broke up into the continents that we know today. It's called the theory of continental drift. They believe that it took place during this time. For in his days was the earth divided, it says, and his brother's name was Yoktan. So the important thing about this is that Eber has two sons. Peleg or Phaleg is the genealogy from whence Abraham comes. Yoktan leads to Southern Asia and to other peoples that we've described earlier, perhaps those that are of, again, those countries, the people called, again, the Chinese and all those different families that come out of that. They come out of this son called Yoktan, Southern Asiatic people, and what we might call, again, the areas that are, again, not of Northern Asia, where Abraham was, but further south into those islands that spring off from Asia. Come see.
In his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Yoktan. Genesis
and
chapter
Yoktan
10.
Now is the genealogy that we will not be concentrating on because it's taken us to another people. Even though we're mentioning because we're acknowledging them, they were part of this family. But now the branch branches out. Bob Marley always spoke about the branch. You are the branch that everybody leads to. All the other branches spring out from you, Noah, from Adam, from Shem. You are closer to that seed of Adam then are these bloodlines, as you will see. That's why Abraham is going to be chosen, because he's the closest of all the seeds that have multiplied on the earth to be the closest in every way, spirit, features, everything, understanding, to be into the seed of Adam, even though it was infiltrated in the past, sons of God with the sons of men. Tumshi.
Verse 26 through 30. And Yoktan begot Almodad, and Shelef, and Hazar Mavet, and Yera, and Hadoram, and Uzal,
And we want you
and
to know
Dikla,
that some of these
and
names have been lost, meaning the recordings, the countries have not been able to keep a record, and some of them have disappeared off the face of the earth. Only the strong families survive over these nearly 7,000 years.
Baal, and Abimael,
And you
and
heard of
Sheba,
Sheba, the queen of
and
Sheba.
Ophir.
You know where that's at. Again, that's Africa, that's not Europe. The gold of Ophir, Havilah, all by Ethiopia. You have rivers that came out of the garden, Havilah. It tells you the geographical location. Geography is an important part of understanding the Bible.
Fear, and Havilah, and Yobab. All these were the sons
The other
of
son of Shem.
Yoktan.
We are not from that line. We are from the
Their
other
dwelling
son.
was from Mishah,
We are from Peleg, meaning the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the Semitic seed that leads to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob comes from Eber, but from his son Peleg.
as thou goest toward Shephar unto the mountain
Mamshi,
of
going
the
further
east.
east, letting you know it's
Genesis
going
chapter 10,
further to Europe, east of,
verses 31
again,
and 32.
northeast Africa, the Fertile
These are the
Crescent.
sons of
East of
Shem.
that will take you into the places of Indonesia, take you into other parts of Asia, Babylon, and right on up into those other territories of northern Europe.
After their families, after their tongues, in their lands,
This is how
after their
nations came
nations.
about, with
These are-
languages. They were families, they had lands, and they became people in those lands if God did not destroy them like he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, because the Creator says, the sinful nation will I destroy. And so he destroyed certain nations that were evil in the past. We're hoping with these truthful teachings, we will learn our lesson, this generation of mankind, and not be destroyed like some of the other nations were, because they would not obey.
The families of the sons of Noach, after their generations, in their nations, and of these were the nations divided in the earth
Everybody
after the
on
flood.
earth, after the flood, you have to know that you lead back to one of these people. You know, there was a time when the European played a game on us where they was said, the black man is Ham, and God said, cursed be Ham. Because in the Bible, he didn't say cursed be Ham. If you really read the Bible, he said cursed be Canaan, which was Ham's son. But they're trying to make that you're black people and all black people are Ham. All black people are not Ham. Some black people are Shem and some are Ham. They were brothers. They also had always the closest relationship. They intermarried, all of that. And that's the truth of the history. So you have to realize that you are of the seed of Shem. And so when they trick you and play these games and say the black man is Ham, you're not of the seed of Ham. They know that, but they don't want you to know that you're God's chosen people, that you are Shem. You're the seed of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob, the chosen people of Almighty God. Imagine if every black person knew that and behaved with the dignity that such a title requires. That's why God took his name off of you, not Israel, because you act like a nigger, so he let him call you nigger. You act like a Negro, so he made you a Negro. But if you act like an Israelite, he'll return you in your reversion, in your return, turning back to him. He promised that he would do it. Now, in Genesis, the 11th chapter, and the 10th verse. We're getting down to the nitty gritty, as they say. Because in this, the genealogy of Shem through the line of Arpachshad to Eber to Phaleg, the birth line of Phaleg will be the genealogy from which Abraham, which is the main character at this point in the Bible, will be established. So now I'm establishing the fact that Shem leads to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And that is why when the Jewish people say that they are anti-Semitic, they're not saying they're anti-Shemitic, they're trying to say you're anti-Jewish and use a trick, changing Shem slightly to Sim, because he has to make the connection from Japheth to Shem in order to claim the land of Israel and the heritage that he got with the United Nations blunder when they gave it to him and allowed him to go into the land of Israel as an imposter. That's what has happened. And that's why this is so troubling to so many people, because it's going to open up a can of worms, and it already has been opened, that cannot be shut now. And it's frightening to a liar to have the truth gradually come out more and more and more. And all they have to do is tell the truth, and then it's all over. And then now you're being Jewish, serving God through the Torah. We're being Israel, serving the Creator through the Torah, and then maybe all mankind. But I can tell you, nobody ever wins opposing and going against God, against the Almighty. My advice to anyone that's trying to prevent us from getting this knowledge, you're putting yourself and your people in jeopardy. The Bible says in the next chapter, those who bless these people will be blessed, and those who curse them will be cursed. Let's read and see, did I say it or did our Creator say it? In the 10th verse of the 11th chapter of Genesis, these words.
The 11 verses 10 and 11. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begot Arpachshad 500 years and begot sons and daughters. Genesis chapter 11 verses 12 and 13. And Arpachshad lived 35 years and begot Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he begot Shelah 403 years and begot sons and daughters. So we can see that
this genealogy is a repetition, a repeat of the genealogy that we read earlier for Peleg. And now we are concentrating on this genealogy because it will lead to the man we know as Abram, who later becomes Abraham when the Creator changes his name.
Genesis chapter 11, verses 14 through 17. And Shelah lived 30 years and begot Eber. And Shelah lived after he begot Eber 403 years and begot sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg.
From the word here, Avara, which means to cross over. This name is an earlier name of a name later ascribed to Abraham as Ha'ivri, meaning the one who crossed over. And Peleg now is the son of Eber. This is the direct line that leads to our father Abraham, which then leads to Isaac, which leads to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, proving that Israel and all of Abraham's seed is of Shemitic stock. We can never be anti-Shemitic, we will be against ourselves. Tamshi.
Eber lived after he begot Peleg 430 years and begot sons and daughters. Genesis chapter 11, verses 18 through 21.
Peleg lived 30 years.
And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reu. And Peleg lived after he begot Reu 209 years and begot sons and daughters.
Reu means they will see. It's the word Reu in the plural of they saw. They, again, to use that idea of seeing, just to know Hebrew roots. These names, Serug means branch. All of these names have meanings to them, but we're not going into the Hebrew translations at this time in detail.
Who lived 230 years and begot Serug. And Reu lived after he begot Serug 207 years and
And we're
begot
moving
sons and
closer
daughters.
into modern times, into the days of Moses, who was not yet born, into the days of Abraham, not yet on the scene. Joshua, none of the prophets, they come later. This is history moving forward. This is not religion. Tamshi.
Genesis chapter 11, verses 22 through 26. And Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor. And Serug lived after he begot Nahor 200 years and begot sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. And Nahor lived after he begot Terah 119 years and begot sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 and 28. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran
And of course,
begot
we
Lot.
know Lot was the
And Haran,
son of Nahor, which Haran, that is, which was one of Abraham's brothers, his other brother being Nahor. And of course, Abram, who later becomes Abraham, he now is going to be the guardian of Lot, whose father died. It tells us that in verse 28.
Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees.
Is the very place in Babylon from which Abraham originated and traveled into northeast Africa, where he was given the promised land called Canaan land, now known as the land of Israel.
Genesis chapter 11, verses 29 and 30. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was
The name was
Sarai.
changed to Sarah.
And the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of
a lot of detail
Iscah.
That can be spoken on, but it's not at this time that we're going to do to it. And Sarai was barren.
Sarai was barren. She had no child. Genesis chapter 11, verses 31 and 32. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. And they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there.
In
and
commentary,
the days of Terah,
that this particular man, Terah, he was part of the journey 60 years into the travel, but he did not make it all the way to the land of Canaan. And so Abraham eventually is the one that we see that takes and continues this genealogy of Terah. And the days of Terah, it says,
205 years, and Terah died in
so
Haran.
Now in the 12th chapter is where we're going to pick up and close out this presentation, proving and showing that Abraham is the seed of Shem, and that it's his children, the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the seed of the covenant in every Bible. And so that we will see that in a few chapters, as we are now arrive at the 12th chapter from the 9th chapter, a covenant between Abraham and the Creator will be established as a perpetual covenant. This is an everlasting covenant. It cannot, was not, and will never be broken. It's a promise made to Abraham, confirmed throughout the Holy Scriptures, the entire Bible, with him and his seed, that they will be his people forever. And so I want you to understand that's why this is a controversy. Because if this is true, then what presently exists on the earth today, with a Japhetic people dwelling in a Semitic land, a Jewish religious people dwelling in a people, not a religious, but a bona fide people's land, is the controversy. And it has to be suppressed. They cannot let this truth out or tell it by themselves, but neither can they stop it. because the creator of heaven and earth is the one that has done and is doing what has happened on this earth. He has always been the common thread throughout human history. If you read history and think the Most High, the Almighty, was not in it, you are mad. He's in the history taking place right now. And we better understand that it's been prophesied and there's an understanding of what is to come. We end out today's presentation with these last precepts that we have for you.
Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now Yahweh said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto the land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great.
That's why everybody knows, the Christians, the Muslims, all of them refer back the Jews to Abraham. They can't explain, nor can they validate what they're saying without dealing with the truth. Every liar has to have part of the truth in their lie. And this is the part that they put with that other lie that they're telling.
And be thou a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and him that curseth thee will I curse.
And in thee
shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
Anyone that can get free labor for over 400 years in America, you have been blessed. All that labor. In the Caribbean, they built trenches. They built for the British. All of the infrastructure. Trust me, we've blessed the Europeans. In Africa, all of the wealth of the resources, the trees and the gold and the diamonds that have been looted out of our colonial territories, which are mostly Israelite territories, they've been blessed through us. And it's our loss and their blessing because we disobeyed the Creator. It says in verse 4.
Chapter 12, verses 4 through 6. So Abram went as Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they
when
came.
They came, they passed some other Semitic people, like the Syrians, right north. They weren't Arabs at that time when Abraham, these were all people of pigmentation at that early period in the earth. And they passed through and they saw the Canaanites, all the Girgashites, the Hamites, the Philistines, all were people of color. They passed them as Abraham journeyed from Ur of the Chaldeans and came into Northeast Africa. He passed through other Semitic peoples. He didn't get to Hamitic people until he met the Canaanites and started going south. He's even going to go down into Sodom and Gomorrah. And all of us know the story of Lot. See, Lot is the father of two other people that we speak about today, the Ammonites and the Moabites in the countries of Jordan. Jordan, the capital of Jordan is Ammon. That's from Lot's son, the Ammonites. The Moabites, we have to know that these are people's lands who now are occupied by Arabs. Even Egypt is called the United Arab Republic because the African Egyptians were driven out into the Sudan. This is history. They know it. You have to know it. Did you know what's being taught today? If you do, congratulations. Help spread the truth to those that don't know, whether Israelite, non-Israelite. It says,
Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the terebinth of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land.
Everybody should spread this to everybody you know. If you really want to understand
chapter 12,
when they say anti-Semitic, and put it in its proper place. Anti-Shemitic, of which European Jews are not a part of the seed of Shem. No disrespect to them. They are not Shemitic people. They're converts from European Japhetic seed to practice a religion called Judaism, which we respect, based on Torah teachings, the heritage given to the people of Israel, the people who call themselves Hebrew and Israelites all over the world. I'm in Guyana, others are in Jamaica, others are in Barbados and Trinidad, others are in North America, others are in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, so-called Falasha. We all are the true Hebrew people, and they are more than what I have mentioned. Too many to name them.
Verses 7 through 9. And Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give
Not
this
to
land.
any other people. We don't have to say color. We don't have to mention color. There's only one color that existed. They were people of dark hue. They were people of cultures that were Eastern cultures, Eastern language. We didn't have to use the word. That Cohane that I told you about earlier, and you remember the man that I introduced earlier, and I told you I want to give his name, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. He started, and they have perpetuated and continued this distortion of truth, this trickery by calling people by color. You're not black. You should be insulted when they call you that. You're not white either. And nobody's yellow or red. Again, that's not an intelligent nor proper way of defining people. We have to get back to respectfully calling people by their nationality or their ethnicity and not by the color of their skin. They don't want to call us by our true identity and ethnicity. That's why they're comfortable keeping you confused by even letting them be called by colors, but they don't have the destruction that you have. You are destroyed for the lack of your knowledge. They are not destroyed. They are not deceived by the deception. It's only the person, no, and that's you, the so-called black man who's the Israelite that needs to know and understand what I'm teaching you so that you can also know who you are and they will respect you. If you understand you were supposed to be and are a holy and a righteous people, you have to make so-called black man to become an Israelite. You got to make some major changes in character, in behavior, and in the deeds, especially one with another. That's another subject. We end out with the 7th verse to the 9th verse, which says,
And he builded there an altar unto Yahweh, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto the mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and Ai on the
Bethel
east.
is the
And
place where the temple is. So this is the spot of the temple in the land of Israel, Bethel, house of El, house of God, and Ai on the east. This tells you this is Africa. You don't have to mention color. You know where it's at. And that's why intelligent people don't have to, they only play that color line because they know you don't know. But if you know and understand, nobody has to tell you that an Israelite is a black man. Nobody has to tell you that an Egyptian is a man of pink. No one has to tell you that a Frenchman is a Caucasian or that a German man is a Caucasian. You got to be pretty confused to not know that an Italian is a Caucasian person as well. The confusion comes with your identity. Theirs is not confusing. They made you confused. I'm trying to make you understand what they've done to you and by giving you the truth, the origin of where the name Sem or Semitic comes from. Continue.
there an altar unto Yahweh, and called upon the name of Yahweh. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the
So in
south.
Abraham, he removed, constantly going from one place to another to eventually coming to the place where he was actually in the land of Canaan. And we see as we began that, again, it's the seed of Shem. If you turn once again to our last map that we have showing once again, we want to identify our second map with Europe, Japhet, and what have you. We're going to close out again with a geography piece so that you can be clear. That's the geography piece that we want. Toda, I'm just going to make some comments very briefly on that map that we have. Europe and Japhet right at the top, that's the north. If we go to the east, on the right-hand side of the page is Asia, and we can see that that is Phaleg, and that is, of course, the seed of Abraham. Now we go down to Arabia, and we see Yoktan and Shem in the southern part, again, of this peninsula, or this region of the world, we might say, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. And of course, we have Ham in Africa. Europe, the orange-colored area, the yellow-colored area being Japhet, which is all up there. And of course, if you know anything about Europe, or what they call Euphrasia, Europe and Asia are actually connected as continents. That's why that appears that way with the arrow that's being showed to you. So that, again, Japhet dwells in the tent of Shem. That's what they're showing you when you have that particular scripture. Part of his land is part of that Indo-European and Turkish areas located near the Mesopotamia areas and what have you. As you can see, as you go down to Tarshish, all the way over in the end, all of those places letting you know Spain is there. That's how you got the Moroccans and all of that history with the Moors coming through Northwest Africa. And so we're going to close out here, letting you know that a European can never be of the seed of Shem, nor can a black man change his identity. As Malcolm said, you cannot put a kitten in the oven and think it's going to be a biscuit. When you're talking about nationality, you can't change it. You can change your religion 1,000 times, but your identity, your ethnicity, your nationality, you cannot change. And it is known, you can even change the color of your skin. Some black people even do that. It's called bleaching your skin, but it will not change who your mother and father is and who you were born. You were born an Israelite or Hebrew, you're going to die Hebrew, whether you know it or not. I hope and pray that this has helped us all, Israelite and non-Israelite, to understand the truth in this world of great deception. Hallelujah. All praises, all honor, and all glory be not unto us, but unto the name of the Holy One of Israel, now and even forevermore. Toda for giving me this opportunity to speak with you and for you to give me a listening ear. May Yah bless you, bless your family, both Israelites and non-Israelites alike. Across this planet, may humanity come to respect the maker of heaven and earth and work out these lies that has led us to a planet of trouble and problems. The truth only will set this planet free from its present conditions. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kaya, kaya, kaya.
And they should put my name upon the children of Israel, and I bless them. Sing it.
family to among Israel so Namidi Mishira one family to among Israel so Namidi Mishira